When I first started homeschooling, I kept comparing what I was doing with my previous experience in the public school. I thought about how long the day was. I thought about how the classroom was set up. I thought about just the flow of the day. And I kept this comparison in my mind, and it kept tripping me up. And when we finished earlier, I was like, why do we keep finishing so soon? I thought there was something wrong, or, I'm not doing enough. And I think that's something that will plague the parent or the teacher, parent/teacher, that will plague the homeschool parent's mind is, am I doing enough? And the answer is yes. So the first tidbit to keep in mind is that your schedule in the home is going to look very different than the schedule that was at school. And that means that the school day is going to be shorter. You might do from 9 to 12. It's okay. This is not about the how much you can fit. It's not about the quantity. It's about the quality of what your kids are getting. It's about their ability to be able to sit and digest and do things at their pace. So here we go. If you have a shorter day, I would advise you to have a time in mind where you allow your kids to be free on screens, because one of the complaints, especially during this time, is that our kids are zooming through their schoolwork because they know the routine, and then they spend the rest of the day on technology. Well, of course, we don't want our kids just mindlessly in front of a screen all day. So what do? I would just advise to have some form of a schedule set up where you know that, or they are aware that maybe they do school first, chores second, and then you have a time that you say beginning at, you can do screens from this point onward. And I think that it's good for us to set schedules aside where there's free time without a screen, so that our kids can have an opportunity to produce something out of their own creativity and their imagination. So that's my first tidbit to keep in mind, is your day is going to be shorter, but make a schedule. And if you don't want your kid to be on technology for the rest of the day as soon as they finish, maybe put some cushion time in there where you say, okay, here's your free time, your screen-free free time. All right, so this complaint is what a lot of parents are afraid of. What if my kid doesn't want to learn from me? We bump heads. There's so much frustration and tension whenever I try to teach my kids. So here's a couple of things that I want you to keep in mind. My first response to that, I'm gonna tell you like a real mama, my first response to that is, I don't care what you like. I don't care if you want to learn from Boo Boo LaFoo, or if you want to learn from me, but God gave me you and God gave you me for a reason, and you are going to sit here and you're going to learn today. Now that's my mama response, right? Now I know that doesn't work for everybody, but I am a firm believer in the authority that God has given me as my kids' mother, to not force them, but to set myself as an authority to them, to say, this is what you are going to do. Because if you don't have a problem with eating the food in my refrigerator, okay, I'm getting on a tangent. Gets me hot when we talk about disobedience. No, I'm joking. But not all the time is it disobedience. When it comes to kids, there's a couple of other factors. But I do want to mention, number one, that you are the authoritative figure. God has placed you in your kid's life. That doesn't mean to abuse the authority, but if you have to assert it, you are well within your right as a parent to be able to utilize that authority to tell your kids, no, this is how it's going to go down. Now, other factors play a part into that, and so I'm going to go over those now. Something else to think about when it comes to bumping heads with your kids, or even the frustrations, is that you have your own learning style, and your child has their own learning style. And the way that you are giving them information may not be the way that they receive information. So what you would need to find out is what is the best way for my kid to learn. And there are different assessments out there, different learning style assessments that you can find that would give you the clue to say, oh, that's how you learn. That's why you weren't processing. Or I thought you weren't paying attention, but you really were, because this is how you process. So I'm gonna give you a quick example of this. I was sitting down reading a book with my kids. All three of my kids are very different learners, vastly different from one another. My one son, he's auditory. My one son is auditory, so he can sit and listen. Don't give him anything in his hands. Don't give him a picture. It will distract him. But he will listen and he gets it. While I'm reading, and I'm literally at the table reading to them, while I'm reading, so the one child is sitting there listening, nothing in his hands, doesn't need to be doing anything. He's just listening. He gets it. The other child is meanwhile sketching because he's visual. So he likes to draw and he's listening at the same time. And then my third child is kinesthetic. So she's playing with Play-Doh while we're at the table, or she's getting up and I gave her something like she can jump on. So she's moving because she's kinesthetic. So I have 3 different learners. I have one that's auditory where he can just listen, another one that's visual where he likes to sketch and doodle, and then my third one is kinesthetic where she has to be moving. And all 3 of them are processing the information, but it looks very different. And if you are expecting your kid to say, put that pen and pencil down, you're not paying attention, or stop playing with that Play-Doh, that's where a lot of that head button is coming in, because they actually are processing what you're saying. They are just processing it differently than the way that you think it should look. So that's something to keep in mind. The other thing is, if you're bumping heads with your kids, is to take frequent breaks. The moment you start to feel that impatience rise in you, or that like, you gonna get it. The moment you feel that, it's time to take a break. It's time to woosah, just breathe and come back at it again tomorrow. Just hit the reset button. It's okay. It's all right. They don't need to get everything in a day. And it's all right if they didn't understand it that day. It's okay if you yourself need to recoup and refresh and get yourself recentered so that you can approach it from a better standpoint the next day. And they might also need to reset as well. And then this is the final, my final thought on this matter anyway, is that there might be some emotional blockage. Maybe there was something that happened that day. Some kids tend to think that they might feel stupid. And so you might need to address their confidence in order to get them to move forward. Addressing the emotional blockage, that can be a really big piece, because it could be things going on in the family. It could be things going on within themselves. So you might have to just kind of like pray about that. Ask the Lord to show you, like, okay, what is it that's bothering my kid if they're not able to articulate it? But find out what is blocking them, and sometimes that will help. And take it at the smallest point. Celebrate some of the very fine and small things that they do, and show them their ability, right? And that will also help with some of that emotional blockage, especially if the emotional blockage is they're thinking to themselves, I'm stupid, I can't get it, I'm going too slow, my brother or sister are moving at a faster pace. Help them process through and help them to build up their confidence. All right, next thing is to remember that you don't have to spend the entire year on one subject. I shared this in the, starting to homeschool video. You don't have to spend a whole year on one subject. You could spend 3 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks. You can do a field trip, you could do a project, you could do a unit study. There's so much flexibility and freedom. And if something is not working, guess what you can do? You can stop. It's okay. If it's not working, your kids are just like, oh, this again. If it's not working, it's okay to set it aside. It's okay to look at it and be like, you know what? I find this boring too. Like, once you get into the meat of something and you realize this really is not, it's not working for you, it's not working for me, you don't enjoy it, I don't enjoy teaching it, then, now granted, there are going to be some things that just you have to push through, but there are also some things that it might just be okay to let go. So just keep that in mind, that it's all right to let some things go. Last but not least, tidbit for this particular video is just to remember that you don't need a fancy curriculum for homeschooling. My mother-in-law homeschooled her kids, and one of her greatest pieces of advice when I first started homeschooling was, don't buy an entire curriculum set of anything. So hopefully you haven't done that already. Hopefully I'm catching you just before you begin to purchase any curriculum, but buying an entire set of a curriculum can be a waste of money, because you might get in there and realize this does not work for your kid. And furthermore, if you have multiple kids, what might work for one may not work for the other. So you can just buy bits and pieces and kind of supplement as you go. I find that to have been the most helpful to me, especially with my youngest daughter. being a very different learner than the rest of my other two. So because she's a different learner, I've tried everything. I've thrown at her everything that I was using with my boys, and she's just like, nope, nope, I don't learn that way. So I've had to really try to figure out, okay, what is going to work for this girl, because I'm at a loss. So, but now if I'd have bought like this $200, curriculum, thinking that it's going to work for all of my kids like a cookie cutter, then it's going to be a waste of money. It might have worked for the first one, but you'll be looking for a used curriculum sale to try to get rid of all that stuff. So you can go to homeschoolclassifieds.com. They have some really good deals there. These are basically other homeschool families who are selling their curriculum. Also check out some Facebook homeschool groups. You can find some maybe even specifically for your state or for your county. Get in there and say, does anyone have? And you'll start getting a bunch of responses, and there'll be curriculums, affordable curriculums. They might be used, but who needs them new unless you got to write in them. Hopefully you guys can use this to help start planning the beginning of your school year, and just things to keep in mind to remind you that you can do this too. God bless. Thanks for watching.